We all love classic tractors. They are the legendary iron workhorses that built America. But what happens when trusted machines turn into absolute nightmares? Today, we are exposing the dark, catastrophic side of agricultural history. Forget the heroic tales of farming. We are counting down the 10 absolute worst tractors ever built. These are not just bad machines, they are financial disasters, mechanical death traps, and engineering failures that pushed hardworking farmers to the brink of bankruptcy. You will not believe the massive blunders made by some of the most respected brands in the world. Stick around until the very end to witness the #1 ultimate disaster that literally shattered a legendary tractor empire. Hit that subscribe button now. Starting off our list at number 10 is the Porsche Junior. When you hear the name Porsche, you immediately think of flawless German engineering, blistering speed, and unparalleled luxury. In the 1950s, Ferdinand Porsche attempted to bring that same prestige to the agricultural world with a lineup of sleek, bright red tractors. The Porsche Junior was heavily marketed as an innovative machine that would completely modernize small-scale farming across Europe and the United States. It looked absolutely stunning, featuring a streamlined, curved hood that made it look exactly like a high-performance sports car meant for the dirt. However, the harsh reality in the field was profoundly disappointing. The Porsche Junior was powered by a tiny 822 cubic centimeter single-cylinder, air-cooled diesel engine that pushed out a pathetic 14 horsepower. For any serious, heavy-duty American farm work, it was practically useless. Furthermore, Porsche overcomplicated the design by insisting on using a Voith hydraulic fluid coupling between the engine and the transmission. While this provided a smooth, stall-free start, it also meant a constant parasitic loss of power. Losing any power to a fluid coupling makes a 14-horsepower tractor horribly inefficient. Ultimately, the Porsche Junior became nothing more than an overpriced, shiny status symbol. It was bought by wealthy estate owners who wanted a beautiful red toy to pull a very light trailer around their vineyards, rather than by real dirt under the fingernails farmers who needed a rugged, dependable workhorse. Mechanics absolutely hated working on them because the specialized German parts were outrageously expensive and difficult to source compared to domestic brands. While the Porsche just hurt your wallet with its expensive parts, our next tractor hurt you by simply vanishing when you needed it the most. Coming in at number 9 is the Co-op E3. Following the end of World War II, there was a massive boom in agricultural optimism in North America. The National Farm Machinery Cooperative aimed to provide affordable, high-quality equipment directly to farmers, bypassing traditional corporate dealerships. To get a reliable tractor quickly, they partnered with the Canadian manufacturer Cockshut to rebrand their highly capable Cockshut 30 tractor. They painted it a distinct Co-op orange and sold it as the Co-op E3. On paper, it was a fantastic machine, featuring the very first independent power takeoff and a robust engine. But the disaster of the Co-op E3 was not forged in the engine block. It was created in the boardroom. The cooperative business model suffered from severe financial mismanagement, undercapitalization, and a chaotic post-war supply chain. By 1952, the National Farm Machinery Cooperative spectacularly collapsed into bankruptcy. Almost overnight, thousands of hardworking American farmers who had invested their hard-earned money and trust into these machines were left completely stranded. Dealerships closed their doors forever, and the dedicated supply chain for warranty work and specific spare parts evaporated into thin air without any prior warning. The Co-op E3 quickly became known across the country as the orphan tractor. While a few extremely savvy mechanics could eventually cross-reference Cockshut parts, the average farmer was left with a machine that had zero factory backing. A fundamentally brilliant Canadian design was completely ruined by terrible American corporate execution. When a simple gear broke, farmers found themselves with a useless, rusting lawn ornament. Speaking of heavy burdens, wait until you see the massive track laying behemoth at number 8 that spent more time broken down in the deep mud than actually doing any real farm work. At number 8, we travel back to the dawn of mechanized farming to look at the best track layer. In the early 1900s, agriculture was transitioning away from horses and massive steam traction engines toward gasoline power. The CL Best Tractor Company produced giant, crawling behemoths designed to conquer the incredibly soft, marshy peat soils of California. When they were first introduced, these early track layers were hailed as absolute mechanical miracles. They promised to pull massive multi-bottom plows that no heavy, wheeled steam tractor could ever dream of moving without instantly sinking up to its axles. Yet operating one of these early track layers was an absolute nightmare of physical endurance and extreme danger. These machines were incredibly cumbersome, often weighing over 20,000 pounds. Before the perfection of modern steering clutches, turning one of these giants required the operator to violently manipulate primitive friction drives, demanding immense physical strength. The early tracks lacked modern sealed bearings and were prone to binding, slipping, and completely snapping when submerged in thick mud. Furthermore, their massive low RPM engines consumed fuel at a terrifying rate of several gallons per hour, costing farmers an absolute fortune to operate. Adding to the misery were the dangerously exposed moving parts. Massive unshielded gears, wide leather belts, and the heavy metal tracks themselves spun openly, eagerly waiting to snag a careless operator's loose clothing. Operating a best track layer was less about farming and more about surviving a grueling, life-threatening mechanical wrestling match every single day. They were slow, topping out at an agonizingly sluggish 2 or 3 miles per hour. But if you think that was too heavy and clumsy, our next machine from a legendary green brand sank like a stone in the fields. Landing at number 7 is a very surprising entry from a beloved brand, the John Deere 5020. Introduced in 1965 during John Deere's famous New Generation of Power era, the 5020 was heavily hyped as the ultimate heavyweight champion of the agricultural world. Billed as the most powerful two-wheel drive row crop tractor on the market, its massive 531 cubic inch 6-cylinder engine pumped out an impressive 133 horsepower. American farmers eagerly lined up, expecting a machine that could pull the absolute largest implements with ease. The reality, however, was a masterclass in flawed physics and terrible weight distribution. The John Deere 5020 was simply way too heavy for a two-wheel drive configuration. Tipping the scales at over 16,000 pounds when fully ballasted, this massive chunk of green iron was a geological disaster for farmland. The extreme weight caused severe soil compaction, crushing the delicate soil structure and severely reducing crop yields in the deep tire tracks. The immense weight meant that if the ground was even slightly wet, it would helplessly spin its massive rear tires and dig a trench. Maneuvering this heavy giant at the end of a field without modern mechanical front-wheel drive was a clumsy, deeply frustrating experience. Farmers quickly realized that massive raw power meant absolutely nothing if you could not put that power to the ground efficiently. It was a fuel-guzzling giant that spent half its life stuck in the mud, waiting to be towed out by smaller, lighter tractors. A dangerously heavy tractor is bad, but at number 6 we have a post-merger mistake with electrical gremlins that will drive any experienced diesel mechanic completely insane. Number 6 brings us to the Deutz Alles 9150. The 1980s were a brutal time for the agricultural industry. The legendary American brand Allis-Chalmers faced massive financial trouble, and its farm equipment division was bought out by the German company KHD, the makers of Deutz tractors. The resulting Deutz Alles 9150 was supposed to be the glorious savior of the brand. They controversially painted the beloved Persian orange tractors in a bright spring green, promising American farmers a brand new era of unmatched reliability and advanced European engineering. Instead, it was a chaotic clash of engineering cultures that produced an absolute mechanical headache. To save development costs, the 9150 was not built from scratch. It was essentially a White Farm equipment chassis and transmission, heavily modified to accept a Deutz air-cooled diesel engine. This Frankenstein approach led to massive integration issues. The transmission struggled when paired differently, and the tractor was plagued by a frustrating maze of electrical gremlins. The air-cooled engine, while fuel-efficient, ran much hotter than liquid-cooled counterparts, creating huge thermal challenges in the sweltering American Midwest summer heat. Warning sensors would fail randomly, dashboards would light up like Christmas trees, and the tractor would suffer crippling electrical faults for no apparent reason, leaving furious farmers stranded miles from the barn. The Deutz Alice 9150 alienated the fiercely loyal Allis-Chalmers fan base and became a sad symbol of awkward corporate mergers. It was a tractor that simply could not be trusted during the critical planting and harvesting seasons. Electrical issues are undeniably frustrating, but wait until you hear about the Eastern European nightmare at number 5 that leaked hydraulic fluid like a cheap sieve. Taking the number 5 spot is the Universal 650. During the Cold War era, the Romanian manufacturer UTB aggressively exported the Universal 650 across the globe, including to the Americas. It was heavily marketed as the ultimate budget-friendly workhorse, significantly undercutting major Western brands like Ford and Massey Ferguson by thousands of dollars. For smaller farmers in developing agricultural markets, the promise of a cheap, rugged, 65-horsepower tractor based on older, proven Fiat designs seemed like an incredible bargain. On the surface, it looked like a sturdy, reliable piece of machinery. But as the old saying goes, you get exactly what you pay for. The incredibly low price tag was achieved through shockingly cheap metallurgy and terrible factory quality control. The Universal 650 quickly earned a widespread reputation as a notoriously leaky disaster. The hydraulic system and power steering were fundamentally flawed. Cheap rubber O-rings, weak cast metal housings, and poorly machined valves blew out constantly under pressure. It was never a question of if a Universal 650 would leak hydraulic fluid, but rather how many gallons it would lose in a single day of work. These tractors turned pristine farmyards and clean barn floors into hazardous, slippery oil slicks. Have you ever had to wrench on a tractor that bled expensive oil faster than you could pour it in? The Universal 650 became widely known across the country as the mechanic's worst enemy, demanding constant tinkering just to keep it running for a single planting season. It was a cheap purchase, but a vastly expensive machine to maintain. Leaking oil is one thing, but our number 4 tractor had a nasty habit of literally boiling over under intense pressure. At number 4 is the Ford 7000. In 1971, the Ford Motor Company had an ambitious idea to win the fierce horsepower wars. They looked at their legendary bulletproof Ford 5000 tractor, which American farmers absolutely loved, and decided to squeeze significantly more power out of it. To meet the growing demand without designing a completely new engine block from scratch, Ford engineers slapped a factory turbocharger onto the side of the 256 cubic inch 4-cylinder engine. They launched the Ford 7000, promising 94 horsepower of turbocharged glory. However, pushing that much power through a block originally designed for much less proved to be a severe thermal challenge. The original engine architecture and cooling system were pushed to their absolute limits to handle the massive increase in heat in cylinder pressure generated by the new turbocharger. When farmers put the Ford 7000 to work, lugging a heavy plow or running a high-demand implement on a sweltering summer day, the tractor could easily transform into a ticking time bomb. If the radiator was not kept perfectly clean, the engines would rapidly overheat without warning. Blowing head gaskets became a notoriously common occurrence, leaving farmers with catastrophic engine failures right in the middle of the busiest seasons. Instead of a carefree workhorse, farmers found themselves with a temperamental machine that had to be closely monitored on the temperature gauge to prevent a total engine meltdown. It was a pioneering engineering idea that pushed the internal metal components just a little too far. Blowing a head gasket is financially bad, but it is absolutely nothing compared to the permanent physical damage caused by the screaming engine of our number 3 pick. Taking the bronze medal of disaster at number 3 is the Oliver 1950. In the mid-1960s, the horsepower race in the American tractor industry was incredibly fierce. Oliver needed a massive engine to stay competitive and power their heavy 4-wheel drive models, so they made the bold, unconventional decision to drop in a screaming General Motors Detroit diesel engine. The Oliver 1950 was heavily advertised as a relentless powerhouse, a tractor with an unbreakable spirit and endless torque that could confidently conquer any tough, clay-filled field across the United States. But the harsh reality of operating this beast was pure, unadulterated auditory torture. The power plant was a 453 Detroit diesel. Because it was a two-stroke diesel design, it fired every single time the piston hit top dead center. The final result was an ear-piercing, deafening, metallic scream that sounded exactly like a jet engine crossed with a heavy machine gun. Imagine sitting directly on top of that horrific shrieking noise, tearing at your eardrums for 12 agonizing hours straight in the hot, dusty sun while pulling a heavy chisel plow. It was so incredibly loud that it literally caused permanent hearing loss for an entire generation of tractor operators who did not use modern ear protection. Add to that the violent, bone-rattling vibrations that heavily shook the steering wheel, the metal fenders, and the operator's seat, and the Oliver 1950 became an agonizing workplace. It pulled like a runaway freight train, but it exacted a heavy physical toll on anyone brave enough to drive it. Losing your hearing is terrible, but the primitive death trap at number 2 could literally cost you your life. Coming in at number 2 is the Waterloo Boy. We have to give immense respect where it is due. Introduced around 1914, the Waterloo Boy was the pioneer that eventually launched the John Deere Company into the tractor business. It was enthusiastically marketed as the ultimate replacement for the horse, promising tireless mechanical kerosene power to a generation of American farmers who had never operated motorized equipment before. It was a true mechanical marvel of its time, fundamentally changing the landscape of American agriculture and proving that a smaller, affordable tractor could actually work. However, looking back through the clear lens of modern engineering and safety standards, the Waterloo Boy was an absolute mechanical death trap. This primitive machine possessed zero safety features. It featured massive, exposed steel gears, wide unshielded leather drive belts, and a giant, heavy metal flywheel spinning violently right next to the operator's legs. One tiny slip of a muddy leather boot, one loose piece of denim clothing caught in the wind, and the operator could be instantly pulled into the crushing machinery. There were no safety shields, no rollover protection structures, and absolutely no emergency shutoffs. Even starting the tractor was a massive, terrifying gamble with your physical safety. It required the operator to manually hand crank the massive engine to get it running. This process was notoriously famous for violently kicking back, instantly snapping wrists, and breaking arms of unsuspecting farmers. Its top speed was barely 3 miles per hour, but it was 3 miles per hour of pure danger. It belonged safely behind velvet ropes in a museum, far away from any human operator. As dangerous as that was, nothing compares to the ultimate financial and engineering catastrophe at number 1. And finally, the number 1 worst tractor in history, the Farmall 460 and its big brother, the 560. In 1958, International Harvester was in a desperate corporate panic. Their massive rival, John Deere, was secretly preparing to launch their revolutionary new generation tractors, and International Harvester needed a powerful response immediately. Rushing production to market, they introduced the 460 and 560 models, boasting incredibly smooth-running, powerful new 6-cylinder engines. They aggressively hyped these tractors as the undisputed kings of the field, the ultimate combination of modern power and legendary Farmall reliability. Loyal American farmers deeply trusted International Harvester and bought them by the thousands. But the engineers had made a fatal, unforgivable flaw. To save crucial development time and corporate money, they bolted these incredibly powerful new 6-cylinder engines directly onto the old, outdated rear-end transmissions that were originally designed for the much weaker, older Farmall M and 400 series. The results were absolutely catastrophic. When farmers put these tractors under heavy draft loads, the massive torque from the new engines simply overwhelmed the weak drivetrains. The heavy steel bull gears literally shattered into jagged pieces. Metal bearings disintegrated instantly. Entire rear ends violently exploded right in the middle of the field during the crucial planting season. It was a humiliating failure of unprecedented scale. By 1959, International Harvester was forced to issue a massive nationwide recall, tearing down and rebuilding the rear ends of tens of thousands of tractors at their own expense in local dealerships. The disaster cost the company millions of dollars, shattered farmer confidence forever, and permanently destroyed their dominant, undisputed leadership in the American tractor market. It stands as the ultimate engineering catastrophe in agricultural history. From deafening noise and massive oil slicks to shattered gears and corporate ruin, these 10 machines prove that pushing the limits of innovation sometimes leads to absolute disaster. Whether it was the terrible financial ruin caused by the Farmall 460 or the ear-splitting damage from the Oliver 1950, these tractors belong in the history books, not the American fields. Do you agree with our #1 pick, or is there a worse tractor out there? Let us know below, and please subscribe for more amazing agricultural history.